documentation. One moment. Like, I've written like all of this, and it goes in depth of how to do all of it. So if you're struggling, just hold up until afterwards, and this should explain how to do everything. Yeah. Sorry, I just can't go through it one by one. All good. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and continue with this. And now where was I? Okay, so I'll go ahead and explain some of the folders and some of the files that's been created by doing scaffolding. So if we go ahead and open the controllers folder, you'll note that there is now a meme controller. And so this will look something similar to that values controller that we just had. And basically it sets up your basic CRUD operations. And yeah, I'll go ahead and explain what that is right now. So, or should I do that later? I'll explain that later. So anyways, just know that there's a controller class at the moment. You'll note there's also a data folder that's been added on. And so you'll note there's like a meme API context that's been added. And we don't really need to change anything to this. But basically what this context class is, it essentially acts like a bridge between your code and whatever database you use. And the good thing about having this is if your database or data source changes, just changing the config and this still works perfectly fine and it acts as that bridge, which is why we need it. Cool. And so we can go ahead and run this. And so some things to note, we've deleted the values controller, we've created the meme controller, and now when we run it, you'll probably note that it will fall over. Yep, so localhost page can't be found. And so if we have a look here, you can see that our URL still the default still points to API/values, but we've deleted the values controller, so we need to just update this for now. But before I do that, if we go ahead and change this to API/meme, it will just show a blank page, which means it's working fine. It just has no data to then display to us yet. And while that's loading, we'll go, yeah, see, yep, so no error or anything, but blank page with no data. So what we want to do is we want, whenever we press play, we want this page to kind of show up rather than the values page. So we'll go ahead and change that just now. So go ahead and press stop. So that stops the solution. And you'll note here there should be a file called launchsettings.json, and so it's like a configuration setting. And so you can either find it like looking through here, or there is a search functionality, so you can just go launch settings. Yep, so over here, launchsettings.json. Go ahead, double click that. And you'll note there's a whole bunch of values here. And so if we have a look down here, we've got iOS Express and we've got our meme API. And within it, you'll note there's a launch URL, and currently that's been hard-coded to point to API/values for both of these. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and change that. Now you may be wondering, how do you know what to put after the /? And so if I go ahead and clear that. So the thing with controllers and routing, with Entity Framework and ASP.NET and whatnot, for the routes where it gets sent to, we open our meme controller. You'll note there is like a route tag, and so you'll see it's API/controller, and our controller is the meme controller. And so the logic, what it does is it actually strips out the controller name, so it just picks the first, whatever the words are prior to the controller, and then that's your route for that. So here it says API controller, so it'll be API/meme, and so that's how we know where to send the route to. You can change it if you want, but API/the controller is perfectly fine. So knowing this, we can go ahead here, and we can change this value to meme, which is the route, so we'll update both of these. So note there are two, one for profiles, one for meme API. We'll save that, and now if we go ahead and press play, you can see it automatically launches API/meme now. and it will probably just display that white page again because we have no data. So I can get in and close that anyway, it's not needed. Cool, so that's the bare bones. So essentially what we have now is, we essentially have a very bare bones API that you could use. So you could post data to it, you could delete stuff, you can do everything you really need to do. But there are some catches. So this works perfectly fine on your local PC, but it won't work if you publish this to Azure. And the reason for this is because of the database that the default project sets up. So if you go ahead and look into our app settings.json, you'll note our connection string. So it's our connection string to our database. And you'll note that we're using a SQL, MS SQL database, SQL Server, but you note that it's a local DB. So if you go ahead and publish this on Azure, it won't work. And so now we're going to run into a problem. So what do? So you can set up a SQL Server on Azure. The thing is, it is a little bit pricey, and with the trial Azure version, you probably won't have enough money to run one of those. There is something else called an in-memory database. So what it does is it just saves all your data in the RAM. This is good until your server restarts. So wherever we publish this API, if that server restarts, then you'll lose all your data. And so what we're going to use is we're going to use something called SQLite. And what SQLite is, it's a database engine, but it's a local database engine, and it just runs off. So it's a database engine that runs locally. So it's a little bit different to this local server. But yeah, I can explain a little bit more. So so essentially it's a library. SQLite's a library. It implements self-contained serverless zero configuration database engine, so you can store whatever data you need. It's also free as well, so that's pretty cool. There are some limitations of this. So you're like, oh, free database, yay. But the thing is, it's not very scalable. So with SQLite, whenever you need to read something or you need to update something, it locks the whole database. So if it's one user doing this, it's completely fine. But if you've got many users trying to access this database, they'll be locked out until who the first person was using the database finishes, and then they'll be able to use it and whatnot. So there'll be a lot of lag and it'll be very slow. So it's not recommended for production use, but for this assessment, it's completely fine. Cool, so we need to now add the SQLite library. And so if you remember back to the first session this morning, you'll note there was like npm install and like node modules and whatnot. So with Visual Studio and C#, there's something called NuGet packages, and those are essentially libraries. And you can add these libraries to your project or your solution using NuGet. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add the SQLite NuGet package. So to do this, what we'll need to do is first, you'll note the solutions thing, so we'll go ahead and right click, and you'll note something called Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. So we'll go ahead and open this. And this is what it kind of looks like. So it opens a new tab, you've got Browse, Installed, and Updates. And so one thing to note, so when you're adding a NuGet package, you may think, oh yeah, I'll just search for the NuGet package here, and then it won't pop up, and you'll be like, why isn't it showing up? And that's because your defaults to the install tab. And so because the NuGet package you're trying to find is not installed, it won't pop up. So just be note, you need to click on Browse. And then there are a whole bunch of libraries that you can add. Get one for Slack. Sorry, distracted. Anyways, so we'll go ahead and add in the SQLite NuGet package. So for this, it's called Microsoft Entity Framework Core .SQLite. So Microsoft Entity Framework Core .SQLite. Once again, this is on the documentation, so you can copy paste that if you want. And then you'll be provided with a whole bunch of ones you can pick. So once you note that this is the main one, and then you've got specific libraries within the main library that you can select. As we want all of it, we'll just click the parent library and click that one. My screen's a little bit small, but essentially you then want to tick the project you want to add this NuGet package to. So you tick. So then there's a button here called install. You can pick the version value. That version's fine, so we'll go ahead and click install. And then there's some licenses, so you'll need to accept those if you want to use the package. Click I accept. And then you just need to wait for it to install. I think that should be good, so you can always check that in dependencies, NuGet, and yep, so it's there, framework core SQLite. Cool, so it's been added. Cool, so we've added the library. Now we need to tell our program to actually use SQLite. And so now this is done in a file called startup.cs. So this startup.cs, it acts like the initial configuration file when it's starting up your API. And so if I close that, go from there. So here you'll note this one at the bottom, startup.cs. If you can't see it, you can always go ahead and search for it. So I'll double click on that. And there's a whole bunch of code, so startup, configuration, so add compatibility version and whatnot. But the piece we're interested in is this bit here. So when it sets up, it adds that DB context, so that bridge that I was talking about earlier with the context. And then you can see here, there's options.use SQL Server. And now, as we noted, we can't use SQL Server, so we'll go ahead and use SQLite. So because we added the SQLite NuGet package, we can now go use SQLite. Cool, and so that's good. And now it goes and gets the connection string. And so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and change the connection string, because if you have a look earlier, so the connection string is back in the app settings. So connection strings and then main context. So this connection string is now for SQL Server, so we need to change this for SQLite. So I'll just go ahead and delete that. So what context do we need? So with SQLite, what it does is it creates a local database. So what we need to do is just need to create whatever we want to call it. So go ahead and call that, I don't know, meme.db. So the .db stands for database. And that essentially will create a file which is a local database. You can call that whatever you want. So now, with SQL Server, normally if you've done any instances, classes or whatnot, you have to define like table schemas for your database, kind of what columns you want, what tables, how the relationships kind of interact with all these tables. With SQLite, as it's like a serverless, non-configurational sort of one, what we need to do this is we need to seed data. And so what seeding data does is it essentially, if there's no data, it then creates the database based on this kind of like example data. And so what we do is we kind of say, this is the data, go ahead and create the table, and that's what seeding is essentially. So how do we do this? So what we need to do is we'll go ahead and create a new class file in our models folder. So you go right click, add new item, and go on class, and we'll just call that seed data. Seed data. Go ahead and add that. So you have public class seed data. And now what we'll do is, I won't bore you guys waiting for this to kind of like make me write this out, so I'll just grab the code from documentation. But essentially what we'll be doing is, within this class we'll check, is there any data in our database? And if there's no data, we'll go ahead and seed it, otherwise we don't need to seed it. So, in the README, I probably should create a list. Okay, so go ahead and there. Yeah, I'll paste this in and I'll explain what this does. Cool. So there are some errors and I'll go through how to fix this. So we've got our seed data class. So within there we've got a initialize method, which we'll be calling in another class, which I'll get to later on. So essentially using the context, so that bridge once again, which gets us our database source. We then want to first see if there's any entries, any meme entries in that database. And basically if there are entries, we already know that our database has been created. If not, what we want to do is we want to create a new meme item with how it should look in the database. So we'll create all the columns, and then we'll go ahead and save changes. And so essentially what that does is it creates that database. Now there are some red squigglies, and so with Visual Studio, it's quite good. So it does provide suggestions on how to fix these errors. And so all you need to do is just hover your mouse over it, and you'll note there's, I guess on the left there's like a yellow light bulb with a cross, and then there's some suggestion on the right side of that. So you can go ahead and just click on that light bulb, and what it does is kind of explains, well listen, because I've copy pasted the code and I haven't created the context the same name, that's probably why. If you follow the documentation, you'll probably create everything the same. But essentially what it means is it doesn't know this context file, so I just need to rename that. What does it mean? API context. And to note, you should probably capitalize your files and classes. I can't be bothered refactoring that now, but just something to note. And what's this? So iService doesn't create root client service. So once again, you can just go ahead and click on that. And for this, so it needs another library, so you can just go ahead and add that using this. That's sort of that, and now there's something else, so there's probably another namespace that's not being used, so just use intermediate. And what that does is it just added these two namespaces up the top, so these are libraries that just help understand where to find this method or whatever. So that's looking good, so we can go ahead and save that. So now we've created a class to seed our data. Now we need to seed our data on startup. So essentially, for the first time when we start this up, we need to do this check and initialize our database before we can actually use our API. So I'll go ahead and do that. Cool, so for this one, we need to go into our program.cs file. Cool, and so I believe this gets even called up prior to the startup.cs. So first you got program.cs, which then calls startup.cs, which then runs your API. So let's have a look. So it creates web, create web host builder, and then which calls this, and this sort of stuff here. So we need to change this so it calls our seed data. So I'll just go ahead and copy paste that code, and then I'll go ahead and explain what's going on. Okay, so there are a whole bunch of changes that we've done and a whole bunch of errors. I guess we can fix them as we go. So first we need to figure out the scope, so we just import that, dependency injection again. Okay, so essentially what we're doing is we're getting the service, we're then getting our context. So once again, we need that bridge between our code and database or data source. Once again, because I haven't called, actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to refactor this just for this being a pain. Rename. Bank. I have no clue whether this will break anything, but we'll find out. Yeah. Cool, I think we can. So, back to what we're doing. So that's fine, so now we just need to using this, so you'll note because it's in a inner folder to where program.cs is, we just need to refer to that folder. So we have a look here, you got meme API, got models, which is where that meme bank context lives. Okay, anyways, continuing on. So migrate is probably just another library we need to add into there. So first it does your database migrations, and then it checks to see if there was any seed data or whatnot, which is just what we created earlier. So we can go ahead, drop it into there, and that's that code that we added in earlier. And then if there's any error, we just handle that. And that's basically all the change we need to do. Now there's one key thing. So before we go ahead and run this, we need to do our database migrations. And so essentially what this does is it will create the database based on the code that we're provided, so we don't actually have to write any SQL queries to then create a database and whatnot. So there are two commands for this, and in order to do this, there are two things. You can either use, I would use command prompt. So we'll go ahead and open up command prompt, which opens this up, and so you'll need to navigate to the folder where you created your solution. See, hopefully there's an easy way to do this. Okay, so if you need to find out how to do that, so you can always just right-click your solution and then go open folder in source control, in File Explorer, copy the path, go back to command prompt, and then just a simple cd. That'll take you to wherever your code is, and now there are two commands we need to put in. So we need to go to .NET EF, which is into the framework, migrations, and add. So we need our initial create. So this will initially create the scripts to create a database. We'll go ahead and run that. The project was found. Probably need to go even further in. CD API. We'll just leave that to run. Really failed. Let's figure out why. This is probably because I renamed the file earlier. So that's alright. You just go ahead and run that again. Yep, so if it fails on the first time, just go ahead and click rebuild. As I mentioned, normally the rebuild sorts out any trivial errors. Cool, so that's done. So that's that, and now what we need to do is we just need to go ahead and update the database with the columns. So we go .NET, EF, database, and just run an update. Now when you run these queries, you may find out that it will say, oh, I can't find .NET or whatnot, and if that's coming up, that means you haven't installed the .NET 2.1 SDK. So that's mentioned back in the prerequisites before starting this sort of stuff up. What's going on here? Format of initialization string does not conform to specification. Yeah, that's because of the rename. Okay, so. Assuming you guys haven't renamed anything, you probably won't encounter this, but because I renamed stuff, it's probably creating issues. What I'll do is I'll just go ahead and delete this context and recreate it.
So you want to just delete this?
Something weird about the I think it might be what's that configuration?
Do I change my kit? Set. Well, it says, was it make the group? What's the kit? Wait, I mean, I have this
the storage comes, right? And then it's copy paste repeat, copy paste connect. So you can describe like the connection string. If it doesn't work, don't worry.
Alright, so it looks like there's some issues going on with what I've done. I'm not sure, and I don't really want to waste your time trying to debug this right now. I think it's mainly just because I copy pasted it with a different solution name. Thankfully, I have my previous one that I've got, so I'll just go ahead and open that, and you can kind of explain what's going on with that one. Solution. Okay, anyway, so after you run those two .NET command line commands, you'll note you'll have two of these folders that go ahead and get created. So within you'll get a migrations folder, and you'll get these two classes that have been created. And so essentially what this does is it go ahead and creates your database. So if you were to go ahead and press play and run it, you'll note that you'll get whatever your seed data is. So if we go back into the seed data, you'll note that you'll get this data returning back to you. And you'll also note that you'll get a meme.db class database file that gets created, and so that's essentially your database. Cool, so now you've seeded the data and you've got your database created. What we need to do now is we need to go ahead and I guess kind of understand these CRUD operations that I've been talking about. And we'll add something called Swagger as well to make it a little bit easier to play around with your database. So essentially, what is CRUD? So it stands for create, read, update, and delete. And so those are like the 4 functions of persistent storage. And so these are these operations that you kind of want to do with your database and your API. And so we're already doing this within our controller. And when we use the browser, we're actually doing the read part of CRUD, so we're getting the information. So you may be wondering, how do you do the other operations? And so you've got 2 options for this. So there's a program called Postman, and some of you guys may have heard of this. And so essentially what it does is you can send requests on to an endpoint and it returns data back. Or what you can do is, if you're creating your own API, you can go ahead and add a library called Swagger. And what this does is it enables this functionality in a website, so then you can interact with your API that way. It also creates some documentation, so it makes it a little bit easier to use. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add Swagger to your API. So as a library, we'll need to go ahead and add as a NuGet package. So once again, scroll to the top of your solution, right click, and go ahead and click on Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. Once again, you've got to click on the Browse tab and then search for Swagger. And what it's called, it's not called Swagger, so it's actually called Swashbuckle. So this is the parent part of Swagger. And so swashbuckle.asp.net core. And so it adds the Swagger tools, which is within it. So after you've gone ahead and added it to your solution, we then need to add some configuration to then enable Swagger into your endpoint. So to do that, what we need to do is we probably need to go to the startup.cs file. Look. Cool. And so if we go ahead and scroll down into configuration services. So we used this before, so remember when we wanted to change from using SQL Server to SQLite, we changed that. So just below that, we want to add this line of code. And what it does is it adds Swagger. And what it does is, so you can specify the version of the API. So this is version 1. You specify it, and you can specify a title. So we're calling it meme bank for now. then there's a couple of more configuration we need to do. So once we've added that into the configuration services, then going into the configure method just below, we then want to use Swagger UI. And so what we're doing here is we're just creating an endpoint for Swagger, so which is / Swagger v1 and then just the JSON. And this line down here, which it says root prefix. So if you don't want to then have to navigate to this URL each and every time, if you do string.empty, basically what this does is if you go to the root part of your endpoint, which would just be localhost, it will automatically redirect you to this URL, which makes it a little bit easier. And there's one more thing that we need to do. So if we go ahead and click on our app settings, or actually we'll go to our launch settings. And so earlier you may have remembered we had this launch URL. And because we want to use Swagger, what we want to do is we just want to go ahead and delete that out. Delete that out from both places and hit save. And so now what we do is if we go ahead and press play, you'll see now that it automatically launches to the root, and so this is what Swagger looks like. And so just by adding those couple lines of configuration and adding the Swagger library, you get this nice little web page. And instead of just getting a whole bunch of JSON coming through, so if you hadn't have added Swagger, what it would look like is more like what is it, phase to API test, Azure websites, what's this API? So without Swagger, you would just be seeing this, and you'd only be able to see the data, but by adding Swagger UI, not only can you see the data, so and it explains what you need to do in the response code and stuff. So yeah, the data gets displayed here. And then you can do a whole bunch of other things as well. So you can add names, you can get a specific name, you can delete names, put names, and do a whole bunch of other stuff as well. If you're up to this time, you're following along, you probably won't have these two here, because we need to go ahead and add those, because all we're doing at the moment is just adding the JSON. Cool. So now, back at the first session earlier today, you may have noticed that there was a search bar, and that you could search by specific means. And so what we'll do is we'll now go ahead and add that search functionality. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So back in Visual Studio, we can go ahead and press stop. And now what we want to do is we want to go to our meme controller. So remember, this is where all the core logic of your API is stored. We go ahead in here and we'll scroll up. Cool. So what you do is you paste this code. So this code is in the documentation. And so what we need to do, so first, because so we need to structure this in a way for the, in terms of like the URL, the route. And so what we need to do is we want API, or actually no, we don't. So by doing it just by tags, so it will just mean /tag will be the endpoint. Anyway, so /tags will be the endpoint, which is the route. We want to do a get, so basically we want to get all the tags that are being stored. And so how do we do this? So what we do is we use something called link. And so it essentially stands for language integrated query. And so what it allows you to do, it allows you kind of use like query language in like Microsoft languages like C#. So it allows you to write sort of similar queries as you would in SQL, but in C# essentially. So this may look a little bit familiar for those who are familiar with SQL. So essentially, what we want to do is within the context, so remember context, that's our bridge between our code and our database. So essentially within our database, within the meme item table, we want to select all the tags, and then we want them distinct. So what this does, so essentially, within our database, find all the tags, and then what this thing does is basically it removes any duplicate tags. So if we didn't have this, and we say, if we didn't have this, then what it'd do is return like 10 SpongeBob and like 5 whatever and whatnot. But by having this distinct, it only returns 1 SpongeBob, because we only need to know the first one of whatever that tag is. So essentially, once we've found a list, we then go ahead and assign it, and then we create a list, and then we essentially just return it. And if you look here, this here, so get tags is what the method is called, and this section here is what is being returned. So as we're returning a list of strings, we need to specify a list of strings here. So searching is really as simple as that. So once you've added this in, if you go ahead and click run, you'll know you'll have API means tags, and so if you go ahead and click on that, you can try it out. You're going to try it out and execute. What it does is it'll return a whole bunch of tags of whatever you've uploaded. Cool. So that's that search functionality done. And now there is one last thing. So if you note with what our API is responding with, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on this, try it out. You'll note that we've got a URL field. And so this is how we're doing storage of the images. So essentially when you have like an upload service to upload images, you don't want to store the actual image itself in the database or in the file system. Or actually you want to store it in the file system, but not in the database. And this is due to, you get a performance hit if you start storing images in your database. And so in order for us to store our images, what we're going to be using is something called Azure Blob Storage. And so it's more like a file system. And so what we do is we get the image from whoever's using the website. We get this image, we store it in Azure Blob, and then Azure Blob gives us a URL. And so what we do is we then import that URL and store the URL within the database, as you can see here. And so what we'll be doing next is we'll be building this upload functionality. So in order to do this, so this is now where you need your Azure account. So what you do over here, so after you've logged into Azure, you'll get something like this. And so we need to go ahead and create our blob resource. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a create a resource. And what we'll do is we'll search for blob. Yep, so storage account blob data lake gen 2. And we'll go ahead and click create. Cool, and so now we'll come with a whole bunch of stuff that you'll need to fill in, and I'll kind of go through this. So you won't have a Visual Studio Ultimate MSDN subscription. You should have one that you've created earlier. Resource group, it's probably best to create a new resource group. And so basically what this does is it's like, it creates like a container for all the other services. So say, as we'll be creating an endpoint also for our API, we can then put that in the same resource group. So then if we ever wanted to delete the API, by deleting the resource group, we'll also delete the blob storage as well. It makes it a little bit easier to do. So we'll go ahead and just create a resource group. So this, you can call it as you want, phase to API resource group. Okay. You then need to pick a storage account name, and so this does need to be unique. I won't write one down just yet, because then if someone else is on this page, they'll just use that and they won't be able to create it. Pick a location, so as we're all in New Zealand, it's probably best to pick the one that's closest to us, which is in Southeast Australia. Standard performance is fine. On the account kind, you want to go ahead and click on blob storage. And you just want the locally redundant storage. It's a little bit cheaper. And access to your hot is completely fine. Cool. So we'll go ahead and just click on create, review and create. And it probably won't work because I need to add in the URL. I'm just going to turn off my screen and create it, just so this works. One moment. So essentially, after you click review and create, you get like a final page where you can review everything, and then go ahead and click create. And I think we'll get to do this. Cool, so you just need to go ahead and wait until that gets deployed. While I was creating, do you have any questions so far? Yes, question.
The reason why it wasn't working for me at least, the connection string, you could have, instead of just meme.db,
Yep.
you could have file name equals meme.db.
Ah, yes, that's a good point. Yeah. So I think in the documentation I also have that as well. Good point. Yep, that's right. So, yeah, good job actually on that. If we had prizes, I'd give you a prize.
We do.
Oh, we do have prizes. Yeah, give this guy a prize. That's really good. Yeah, good point. Actually. So yeah, well, okay. So let's test that out. Actually, I'm pretty sure it'll work. Let's go ahead and do that. So the issue why it wasn't working before, pointed out by this guy over here. So for the meme context, we actually need to put what's the file type or something. Where is it? What's the tag? File something? File name, right? I will need to update the documentation for that. Anyways, so you'll need that, and then it should run. Cool. So once your deployment is created and complete, go ahead and click on Go to Resource. Cool. And so we'll create our blob storage. Now what we need to do is we go ahead and click down here on blobs. And so we need to go ahead and create a container. And so what a container is it will be a container for whatever blobs get stored. So we'll go ahead and create a container and we'll call it images, because we want to store our images within this. And in terms of public access level, we'll go ahead and change this to container, anonymous read access containers and blobs. And so this just allows anybody to read it. So if anyone's using your website, they'll be able to read all the images. Go ahead and click OK. And that's created. You can go ahead. So if you were to click on that, you would see all the images that get stored into your blob here. And you can delete them or upload your own from here or do whatever you want. I don't think there's anything else to view. But before we go out of portal, there is one thing to note. So in this inner left-hand menu, you'll note within settings there is this access keys. And so you need to go ahead and click on this. And so there are some settings here that you'll need to copy and place into your application. So you'll note here the storage account name. So you'll need to go ahead and copy that. And just place it into a notepad for now. We'll be using it in a minute. You'll note here for key ones, you'll note the key. So go ahead and copy that. And remember what these are for. So, and you also get a connection string. So once ahead, copy that. Okay, cool. So we'll put that to one side for now, and we can exit out of this for now. So we created our blob storage in Azure, and now what we need to do is we need to allow people to upload images into our API, and then now we need to also then read the image and then send it off to our blob storage. So how do we do this? Let us have a look. So go back into Visual Studio, and first what we need to do is we need to model what this request will look like. So if you think back to earlier this morning when you were uploading an image, there were three things you needed. So you needed the image itself, you needed the title of the image, and you also needed tags. And so these are the three things you need. And so we need to go ahead and model this first. So back into our models folder here. So at the moment you should have seed data and you should have meme item. What we need to do is we then need to create a new one. So once again, right click, add new item, and create one called meme image item. And so once again, we go and add our title, our tag, and image. And so our title and tags are both strings, so we keep it as strings. But for our image, it's known as a form file interface. And so we just need to go ahead and make sure that for that we declare it as a form file. Cool, so we'll go ahead and save that. You may get a red squiggly line under our iForm file, and essentially what you'll just need to do is, once again, if it happens to you, there'll be a light bulb with a cross, click on that and just pick up whatever that suggests. I think it will be this one here, or one of these ones here. Cool, okay, so we've got the model. Now we need to add another endpoint to our API. And so once again, in order to do this, we do this within our controller. So double click on meme controller. And so just like we added it for the tags, we're going to go ahead and add a new method for our upload. And so if we think back to our CRUD operations and kind of like HTTP requests, so I didn't actually cover this before, but so with CRUD, so you've got your create, read, update, and delete. There are equivalent ones for that refer to these in HTTP. So for create, for HTTP it's known as post, like this. For read, in HTTP it's called get. For update it's put, and for delete is just delete. So as our new endpoint, well, a new part of that for the upload functionality, so we need to tag it as HTTP post, and for the route, we want to create a new one called upload. Cool, and then we go ahead and create method name, and over here, so this is where our model comes into play. So this method will be looking for a meme image item, which is what we modeled just before. So we'll be looking for an image, a tag, and a title. And we'll come into here. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to go ahead and check what response is going through. So whenever you're uploading an image or whatnot, it needs to be part of a multi-part request. And so first we need to check that, because there's no point doing a whole bunch of other logic if our request just isn't right. So this is what gets done first. What happens is you'll probably have a red squiggly line here, and this is because we need to go ahead and create the helper class. So in order to do that, we go ahead and just right click and create a new folder. So right click, add new folder, and we'll go ahead and call that helpers, which I've got here. And then on here, you just right click, add a new class called multi-part request helper. Don't really need to understand what this kind of does. Basically, it just checks your request, make sure that there's a content type, make sure that it's within the boundary length, checks that it's form data, checks that you've got an image or whatnot. So yeah, this is just a help class. This was included in an earlier version of ASP.NET, but for .NET Core they've removed it, which is why we need to create our own helper class. So it's just copy paste really. Back to the main controller. So after we've checked that it's the right type of request, then we need to try. So first what we need to do is we need to go ahead and read the image that's being sent to us. So in order to do that, we need to open a read string. So we go main.image, so that's our iForm file thing. And we go ahead and open a read string. That goes ahead and reads the image. Next, what I've done is I've created another method called upload to blob. And what we send here is we send file name, whatever the file name is, and the actual image information itself. So if we go ahead and click on this, so just below in our meme controller, so we're going from there down to the scare. From async, and so you'll note a whole bunch of async there, and so basically what that does is because we need to send a request to Azure, we don't know when it will return, it could return whenever, and so by having it async it doesn't hold up the rest of the program. We just got some parameters, we've got the file name, and we've got the image itself. So have a look here. So remember earlier I got a whole bunch of details from our blob storage and copied it down into Notepad. This is where we need to start referring to it. So in order to upload your image to Azure Blob, we kind of need to know what account it's under, and it needs a key to make sure that it's a valid request being sent to be stored, kind of like authentication. So what we need to do is, you'll note there is this configuration thing here. And then you'll note there's Azure Blob and name. So what we need to do is we'll store all our credentials in the JSON file. So what we'll do is there should be something called app settings. So what we'll do is we'll, so there was that source thing. So just after that, so you won't have this here. So go ahead, type comma, and then I call this Azure Blob. You can call it whatever you want, but you just need to make sure that you know what it's called because you'll need to refer to it. And then add those three things that we had before. So back here, so I'll just update this one. So we had some blob storage name, which is what I called my blob storage. So paste that into there. You add a key, which was the second thing that I copied over. Paste that into here. And a connection string. Copy that and pop that into here. Cool. And if anyone's confused about where I got these values from, so once again, if you go to your Azure portal, you go to whatever you've named your blob storage. You go to access keys within the inner left menu. And once again, so this is storage name, key, and connection string. I think there's some load balancing going on, which is why you've got two keys, but for the purpose of this demonstration, just using one key is perfectly fine. So yeah, this is where I got the information, and I popped it into here. So once we've put it into our app settings.json, we now need to refer to these keys within our meme controller. So in order to do this, we use this configuration variable, and essentially what this is the user's dependency injection to then find these key values and inject them in. So if you were to add this, you'll probably get a red squiggly line because you haven't defined that variable. So what we'll do is we'll scroll up to the top of our meme controller. Just below the top, so where it says public class meme controller, and we need to go ahead and add this line in here. So we go private configuration and name it. So that defines the variable, but then we need to use dependency injection to then inject this configuration when we construct our meme controller. And so what you do is you add this bit in here just after the meme controller. So you got the context and you got the configuration, and then you set this configuration, which is this, to our local variable, which is this thing here. And this is all in the documentation as well. Where are we up to? So after you've done that, all the errors should be fixed. And I'll continue explaining. So we've got our account name, we've got our account key, and we've got our storage. Okay, so we've got our account key and name, and then we need to go ahead and create this cloud storage account, or within our app at least. So we need to initialize the connection to it. So we use our account name and our account key, and we go ahead and create the block line. You probably have red squiggly lines under this as well. If you do, it means you probably need to add in a NuGet package. So in order to do that, we need to go ahead and create this NuGet package. We need to go add this NuGet package. So where are we? So if we go back up to solution, manage NuGet solution, so you'll probably get an error for that and you won't be able to resolve it. So once again, go browse, and what you need to do is type, search for Windows Azure.storage. And it's this one here, and you just need to go ahead and install it. Once you've added this one, Windows Azure Storage, you can go back to your meme controller. And these red squiggly lines, if you click on the light bulb, it will then suggest to use that library. So if we have a look up here, it should already be added. Yeah, so we'll start adding all these sort of things in there. But just follow the recommendation that's being suggested. Cool, so we've got a connection to our cloud blob storage container. We then need to add in the connection string so we can connect to it. And then once we've connected to it, what we do is first, we need to generate a file name for the image that we're storing. The thing with image name, so with blob storage, if you've got two images named the same thing, they'll get overridden. And so something that's good to do is just create a new GUID. So a GUID is essentially just like a string of numbers and letters that's completely random. And it's very, very unlikely that you get the same GUID twice. So this just means that for every image that gets uploaded, it won't override an existing image if it's the same name. And you just need to get a string on that. Then we've got something called get file extension. So essentially what this does, I'll go into it. It's another method which I've added in our controller, it's just below. And basically, we check our file name and we just get whatever the thing is. So, what this means, so essentially, when the user uploads a photo, that image will already have a file name, but we don't want to use that, but we want to get whatever file extension is, whether it's a JPEG, a GIF, or a GIF, however you pronounce that, a PNG or whatever. So we get the original file's file extension, and then we append that to our GUID. You're more than welcome to use the file name that you upload, but I would suggest using a GUID. So once you've done that, you then go ahead and send up that image, and you upload the image to your blob storage. So image container, which we set up before. And essentially uploads it here. So this is the stream. So this is the bytes that we use to read our image, and then we use our cloud blob to upload this image to Azure Blob. And so once that's done, we then return this blob because we still need to use it. So once we've uploaded our image to Azure Blob Storage, we return back and we get that. And what we need to do is we need to check that there's a URI. So essentially, once you've uploaded your image to Blob Storage, it will return you with the URL where it's being stored. And so what we need to do is we need to get this URL or URI and we need to store it into our database so then we can refer to that image. So first we check to make sure that there is a URL. And once there is a URL, we know that, that we've successfully uploaded our image to Blob Storage. Now we need to create a new entry into our database. So we'll create a new meme item, which again is the ID, the tags, image, and whatnot. So we grab the title that's the user's used to upload, we get the tag, and now we need to calculate its height and width. So in order to do this, you need to use system.drawing, and what we do is we once again read the image that's been uploaded, and we can then grab the height and width of it. The URL, so this is being returned by our blob storage, and so this is this here, so we get the URL and we get the absolute URL. Finally, you need an upload time date step, so you just use time date.now.toString, and that just gets the current time. Once that's done, we then add this new entry into our database, and we go ahead and save it. After we've saved it, we then should probably send a response back to the person who uploaded it to say, hey look, your image has been successfully uploaded. And so to do this, so we send OK, which is your standard 200 response, which means everything's good. And we just go ahead and say file, whatever title has been successfully uploaded. And you can write whatever you want in here, it's totally cool. And after you've done that, essentially, that's the upload part complete. So then what we can do is if we go ahead and run this, does anyone have any questions so far? I don't know, walking through this seemed a bit confusing. Yes?
What is the name of Windows Azure?
Yep. Oh, for on Azure or for the NuGet package? NuGet, yep. It is called Windows Azure something, I think. Let me have a look. For me, if you just type in Windows Azure.storage, it should pop up. It doesn't? Let me stop this and I'll just show you. So once again, right click on solution. Go ahead and click on manage NuGet packages. And it's this one here, Windows Azure with an S .storage, and that should pop up. Make sure that you're on the browse tab, not the install tab, because it won't be already installed. I'll come have a look after. Anyway, so once again, if we go ahead and run this, after you've saved it, so if you scroll down, you should see there should be a new endpoint here, so API meme upload. So you go ahead and click on that, and you can try it out from here as well. So you'll see here it tells you what parameters you'll need. So you need a title, tag, and image. So you can go ahead and click on try it out. No test, image, tag, that, and choose a file. So we'll go ahead. We've probably got some file downloaded somewhere here. And hit execute. And assuming it's all good, I'm getting an error. Cool. And so once you executed it, so you'll get file whatever it's called has successfully uploaded, and you get the 200 response.
How do you fix that error from 400 to 200?
All right, are you getting that as well?
Yeah.
I was using an existing input, but let's, okay, if people are getting that, we can go ahead and try and figure this out. I was using a pre-existing input that I created, but can. So let's have a look here. So for me, my connection string here for some reason has a backslash. So if I delete that and try again, I think that should fix it for me. Try it out. So I go. For me this time this should hopefully work. Yeah, so I think if you are getting a 400, it could possibly be just for your connection string, for some reason there may be a backslash. So just double check that everything in here at least is fine. So it should start with default endpoint protocol. So anyway, so that uploaded successfully. So if I went back to Azure and I went to Overview and I go to blobs and go to my images container, there should be one new entry. Yep. So there's this. If I go ahead and click on that, click on this URL, this should be that image that I uploaded, which is that, yeah. So that should be working. And if we went back to our, let's run this again. I go to get, that should be a new entry in there as well. Yep, 86. This is the air and 17th of the 11th, which is today. Yep. So that should be that. So cool. So what we've done so far, so we've created the base project. We can search by tags. We can upload images. Now there is one last thing that we need to do before we're done here. And that's, we need to publish this API to the internet because currently it's running locally. And so you won't actually be able to, well, other people won't actually be able to use it. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead back to Azure, and we're going to go and create a new web app. So if you go back to the Azure portal, and go web app, go ahead and create a new one. I'll put my app name at the end again in case someone picks the same one, likely will happen. And we can go ahead and create and use the existing one. So you know, you would have created a resource group for your blob storage. Go ahead and use the same one. OS Windows and publish code, that's fine. For the app service, if you have access to this, just choose the free tier. I already pre-created one, but you can create a new one if you can. For free, pick it in Australia Southeast and pricing. Dev test free. And so this should be free for you guys as well, so you shouldn't need any Azure money for that. Click OK. That, I think we're going to talk about App Insights tomorrow maybe, so I'll leave that as off for now and go ahead and create. Ah, yes, I need to create a name. So I'll just turn this off while I create a name.
What do you mean for the wheel? You can
Cool. So after you hit create, we'll be creating the background, and you'll note here there's some little progress bar going on there. So you can just click on that and wait for this to deploy. Because once it's deployed, your code is not actually at that web app yet, so we'll need to go ahead and add our code to the web app. So just wait for this to deploy. While we're waiting, do we have any other questions? Is this super confusing or are we okay? Lost? Yes, I don't blame you. What part of you lost at? What part of you lost? All of it or just one specific part? Okay, yeah, very cool. The error was. Okay. Anyway, so once it's been deployed, so you can go to resource. Okay, so if we go to this URL for now, it will just take you here. That's just the default page. We haven't uploaded any code yet. So for your guys' project, when you're doing this API, it's best if you guys use GitHub or something, so that you can do your commits and whatnot. And once you push your code to GitHub, in this inner left-hand menu, there's something here called Deployment Center. And so this is where you can then deploy the code that you've created to this endpoint. So you click on Deployment Center. You then pick your source control. So for me, I'll use GitHub. You can use Bitbucket or whatever you've been using. But yeah, we do recommend you use source control. I think it might be a requirement. I need to double check that. But GitHub, click continue. You may need to sign in if you haven't already signed into your GitHub and authorized it. This app service Kudu build server is completely fine. Continue. So this is where you select your GitHub user, your repo, so you select whatever repo you pushed it to, and then whatever branch, which will probably be master unless you are some GitHub Pro and you've got like a develop branch and whatnot. I haven't actually published my code to GitHub simply because I don't have any private repos, and if I did it, you'd probably just pull the code and then you've got an API ready to go. So, normally you would then click continue and then click summary and click create. As I can't do that, what I will do is I'll just go ahead and minimize that, and I can just publish to Azure from Visual Studio. So other than that, you guys need to use source control and use that deployment center, but essentially I'll publish it. And if I go to whatever URL I've published this to, publish this? I don't think I published this. I published another one. Yeah, I'll go and publish this. You don't need to do this part here, but I'll just show you what it looks like after you've uploaded it. So, publish, service, existing. Search. This one here. Just do cast. So if you guys imagine that we went continue and completed, after it's done, it will start building, and after it's built, if you then navigate to whatever this is, you should see your Swagger page, and you will see it into your endpoint, so this MSA phase 2 day 1. And if you have a look, there shouldn't be anything in here, or there should only be our seed data in here for now, simply because it doesn't carry over the database. So we have a look, we've got our seed data and nothing else. And so this is when you would probably just need to then do the earlier part from this morning and integrate it to these endpoints over here. And you can get the URL from here, this URL, or the request URL. And then you would copy these over and put it into your web app. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions? No questions. Okay. Well, if you need any help after, pop your hand up and I can come answer any questions. I think that's it. And this is all documented on the documentation anyway, so should be good. Cool. Thanks.
I had